From the creators of Relevant Magazine, this is the Relevant Podcast.
This ain't by design, girl. Take it softer, you know I'm out my mind, girl. Don't make this harder. Come and light my fire, baby. How much longer till December? Say what you really mean.
It's Friday, April 3rd. The year is 2020. You're listening to the Relevant Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Huckabee. I'm coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee. Meanwhile, down there in Orlando, Florida, this is behind the scenes. This is the earliest he has woken up since since primary school. It's our illustrious producer, Chandler Strang.
That's kind of true. Hello.
Chandler, haven't you just been up all night? Isn't this usually it's 8 a.m. on Friday morning? Isn't this about the time where you're turning in, winding down Tiger King and getting ready for bed?
Pretty much.
This is about the time where Chandler usually just lies in bed getting ready to fall into slumber, thinking about whether Carol Baskins fed a man to tigers.
Carol did it, man. Carol did it. I'm convinced.
Justice for Carol. There's not one character on that show.
Yeah.
Who isn't the most fascinating person I've ever met?
True. Watch it,
you know, even the reality
full movie about any of them.
Yeah,
a full docuseries.
Yeah, exactly.
They picked Joe Exotic, but it didn't have to be Joe.
We'll jump into Tiger King talk here in a sec, I guess.
And meanwhile, up there in Loveland, Virginia, he's up a little earlier than usual, but just because he's been trying to figure out prices on those tigers, it's our friend Jesse Carey.
Hello. You'd be surprised what kind of deals you can get out there. The dark web for a couple Bitcoin. We'll talk Tiger King, but we do. Oh, this is going to be a lot of fun. Later on this show, we have a guy you guys may have heard of named Lecrae is going to be joining us. He's got an album coming out here. He's got some quarantine listening coming up here. Talk to him a little bit about that, about his recent trip to Israel, and also about a new documentary he's got coming out, a movie about his own life and some of his mental health struggles and how he's overcome some of them. But before we get to that, we probably do need to talk about, do you guys think that if we weren't all stuck inside right now, that Tiger King would be in the same zeitgeist?
It was great timing on their part, though. I mean, accidentally so, but
accidentally great timing.
Well, and like you've seen and again, I guess there's no point in prefacing this. We're obviously taking the stay-at-home orders and the quarantines and everything that goes along with this pandemic very seriously. But I do feel like making kind of objective cultural observations about how entertainment studios and how entertainment consumers are reacting to the sudden, rapid, radical change in everyone's lifestyle, where everyone's just home all the time. Yeah. No one's going out at night and doing stuff. I feel like that's still fair game. And I do feel like, so, right when the initial kind of quarantine stuff came through, I know in my household and probably a lot of households for people who are listening, when Disney announced that they were going to go ahead and release Frozen 2 to Disney Plus, like months ahead of schedule, that was a big deal. My kids have watched Frozen 2. Oh, if you're a Frozen 2 fan, you know what that sound is. You know what that horrible,
it's all new to me.
Horrible sound is. It's
first time.
That voice out across the ice bay it provides the primary plot point for the film. The character's trying to find the source of it. But so it's like, okay, this is going to be a unique time for entertainment. And then studios that had theatrical releases scheduled, especially the big ones like James Bond, and recently they announced that the new Top Gun was being bumped. The new Fast and Furious movie was being bumped, and so it was like, oh well, I guess they're just going to hold all of this. And then studios started releasing some of their like mid-market movies straight to like on demand, so that you could pay like $20 and watch like that movie where rich people hunt people for $20 early.
Unfortunate timing.
Yeah. For the hunt or whatever that movie's called. But
for $20?
Yeah. I think the price point was about $20 to watch what was supposed to be a theatrical release right at your home the night it was released. It's an interesting model, and there are some movies that I think I would rather pay $20 and watch at home when it releases than go to the theater the night, because you're going to at least end up paying $20, right? If you and someone else, you and your bud or your spouse or a loved one end up going to the movies, you're going to spend over $20. So if the new Fast and Furious movie comes out and you're going to see it, there's a case to be made that it's just easier to pay the $20 and watch it at home. But there obviously movies are a lot of fun to watch in the theater. But fast forward, Netflix drops Tiger King onto America, which is the craziest docu-series I have ever seen. It almost it wouldn't even work as a work of fiction because no one would believe the twist. I feel like you hear the stranger than fiction, that sounds like hyperbole. It is the weirdest thing. You couldn't sit down and write this film. Is every person in this docu-series, like we're saying at the beginning of the show, is the most interesting person I've ever met. And I'd like to think that I've met some characters in my day, but I've never met any character, just people that are adjacent to the story. Like the guy who pops in just for a couple scenes and he's got the whitest of white hair. He's got a Gandalf beard and he's just blasting through the Florida countryside on a motorcycle. And the only reason he's in the film is because he uncovers this old VHS tape of a character, who plays a Carol Baskins, who plays a large role in the film, of her in her younger days. And this VHS tape seemingly displays some of her hypocrisies when it comes to tiger care. But even those characters are the most interesting people in the world. I don't know how long they've been sitting on Tiger King, or if the executives in the Netflix boardroom is it is all aligning. It is all wait for it. And it's now.
I saw it before quarantine. It was as all this stuff is ramping up. I had not heard.
We talked about it before quarantine, Jesse.
Yeah, I had not heard anybody talk. I had not heard anything about it. I just saw it on Netflix, new releases, and was all right, I like documentaries, I like documentary series, so I just hit play, not knowing what was going to happen. You know what I mean? Not knowing what I was getting into, and I watched the entire thing straight. Would
you watch 6 hours. all 7 in one sitting? Yeah,
because every episode, or each episode is just more mind blowing than last. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I was oh, what? Out loud by myself. You know what I mean?
And I want to preface to listeners, this isn't, if you haven't watched Tiger King, if you're one of the few people who haven't started, they should know it is not for the faint of heart. There is a lot of amusement, but this show gets dark fast.
Oh,
amusement
for sure.
Amusement is a weird word. There is. Early on, you're just kind of who are these weirdos?
Yeah.
But then it I'd say episode 3, maybe things take a turn for new territory.
Yeah.
Uncharted territory in any media that I've ever seen, and definitely in any people I've ever met.
Yeah. It's weird and dark. But I do wonder, I think your point is valid. Would it be the cultural phenomenon that it is if everyone wasn't stuck at home? Not just looking for something to watch, but all of the other thing that would dominate TV if everyone was home is, I think it's fair to say, is sports. We miss March Madness. They canceled March Madness. Mm-hmm. We would be right now, if some very important NBA games to determine the playoff seeding. The Masters is coming up. Opening day for baseball, arguably one of the biggest stretches for sports in the sports calendar, and that's all canceled. So people don't even have that to watch. So if they weren't all stuck in front of their televisions with not much else on, I think it is fair. Or the only thing else on is coronavirus. Is people talking about the coronavirus. It's every news station. It's just people just talking about the coronavirus. And people, look, man, people should stay informed. I get it, but you need a break. But would Tiger King be the hit that it was if it wasn't for the strange circumstances we find ourselves in? I don't know. I know.
I think it'd be popular, but.
Yeah, I do too. I also wonder this, because did you see that they've greenlit it for a adaptation for a TV series, a TV miniseries, which I think is a pointless thing. You can't.
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
What's the point? Yeah. The guy, Kate McKinnon, playing Carol. Already, they signed her.
Oh,
they signed
really?
Carol
I can see
which is
that.
pretty good casting.
Yeah.
Which is good casting.
How straight are they playing it though?
Well, that's the question. I don't know how you.
Because Kate
don't
McKinnon's
think
not
it's a
really
good
known
idea.
for her like dramatic,
Yeah.
I don't think it's a good idea unless you take a really different turn on it than the show did. Like if you focused on a different, because you could focus on a different character, right?
Yeah.
You could just try to illuminate, which could maybe be,
But it's
maybe
no
be
longer Tiger
interesting.
King at that point. It's no longer Tiger.
Yeah, but it's not Tiger King. It's the Carol Baskin story or whoever you want. But I also think people are just bored in Hollywood. Like they're like, sure, greenlight it. I don't care.
Well, I
Nothing else
mean,
going on.
early on there was that debate on Twitter between Edward Norton and Dax Shepard about which one of them should be cast in an eventual adaptation to play Tiger King, which I don't really see either of them being that great of a fit. I mean, Dax has a resemblance, but I have nothing against Dax Shepard. But I think he's a better podcaster than he is an actor. Like I
do too.
I think his show Armchair Expert is excellent. And this isn't a shade on his acting ability. I just don't see him as the person to bring a character like this to life. You know who I would pick? All right, real quick, around the table.
I've got my pick. Okay.
Okay.
I've been thinking about this.
Chandler, be thinking. Me and Tyler will go then. Chandler for Joe Exotic. I feel like that's who we got to cast. Like if you have to cast Joe Exotic, Tyler, let me hear yours and then I'll tell you mine. And then I want to hear what Chandler thinks.
I don't want to be taking anybody else's.
Okay.
But I think my pick is get Daniel Craig in full on like Logan Lucky mode.
Yeah.
Or like get because he likes to go a little bit like
to do
a little bit Southern American South.
Yeah.
And I think he bleach his hair and I think he could pull it off. I think he could do this.
I think he could do it, and I think he would do it because it seems like he actively looks for characters that are the opposite of James Bond. Like he
likes to undermine the James Bond.
He
thing.
seems to openly resent being James Bond for some reason. Like he
really does.
It's arguably
true.
I mean, it's arguably the best role in Hollywood. You know, like if you could say
most sought after,
if you could either be James Bond, Batman, or a member of the Avengers, I think the choice is James Bond. You know, like Batman
legacy.
Yeah, Batman come and go. You remember every James Bond. You know. And the franchise just seems to get better. They hire better and better directors. Sam Mendes, who just directed 1917, this procedural, he did Skyfall. Like they actively but it is weird how Daniel Craig and Logan Lucky, Knives Out, like he likes to play weird Southerners.
I admire it. I admire it. He's got like two lanes.
Yeah.
James Bond. And like crusty, deep fried, like backwoods Southern Hicks, which is a culture he has zero connection to.
He's
a British.
He's a high society British guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like he's not that. He's much closer in real life to a James Bond than he is to Joe Exotic. My pick. And Chandler, I want to hear yours after this. My pick to cast for Joe Exotic. I feel like this role was made for Danny McBride. Like Danny McBride, every character Danny McBride plays is almost Joe Exotic anyway.
Yeah,
like,
true.
You know what I mean? Like
just a shade.
Everything he
away.
is this kind of weird outsider, whether it's from Eastbound and Down, whether it's from Righteous Gemstones or just some of like the Seth Rogen movies he's done. He plays these kind of outsiders with a chip on their shoulder so well, and I feel like him and Jody Hill. Jody Hill is his filmmaking partner. They kind of came up together and wrote a lot together. They're co-creators of Righteous Gemstones and a lot of Danny McBride's work that he's known for. But I feel like they did grow up in this. They grew up in South Carolina. South Carolina plays a big role in Tiger King. I feel like they know the culture. And Chandler, you could see Danny McBride pulling off a Joe Exotic, right?
I mean, an adaptation or like a version of Joe Exotic. So I would say my choice would be, and because it's they've already played this role, something similar 20 years ago, but David Spade. Because essentially,
like Joe Dirt kind of.
It's kind of Joe Dirt, but like an aged version of it in a slightly different lane or whatever. But
Yeah. Well, we can only, I'm hesitant. I don't see why this even needs to be adapted, but let's give it a shot. Let's give it a shot. Everyone's going to watch it. I think that's the thing. They don't really care if the adaptation is good. They just know like everyone's going to watch it out of curiosity.
True.
Yeah. I hope we didn't lose all the non-Tiger King watchers early on. It is worth watching. It is a little bit. We started out on Relevant After Dark talking about Tiger King, even though this is maybe the earliest we've ever recorded this podcast.
Yeah, I think it's because most of us fell asleep watching or rewatching it, trying to figure it out. But again, warning: it is not for the faint of heart. That everything objectionable, it checks all the boxes of violence, profanity. But in terms of like the most interesting study of weird human subjects, I don't feel like I was talking to my wife about this. As fun as like all the novelties of the show are, as fun as it is to watch these crazy tigers and these people, do crazy things. It is at its core. It's a show about the very, very at times fine line between admiration and exploitation. A lot of the characters in this series, not just with their love of like exotic animals, which they admire, but also, to different degrees exploit for their own, profit, but also how the same people seem to mirror that in all the meaningful relationships in their life. Every character in there seems to have this unhealthy, admiration for the significant people in their life. That admiration quickly turns to exploitation. And I feel like as a human character study about what happens when that admiration goes unchecked and it allows people to exploit the people in their lives that they admire and appreciate. I do feel like that is the interesting kind of subtext of the series that applies to a lot of stuff, not just for people raising exotic tigers, but I feel like you see this in the church a lot too. Pastors or leaders will find people in their congregations who they admire for different reasons, but end up getting exploited or, end up getting burned out. Or Christians will, find these leaders that they admire and want to kind of put on a pedestal, but end up kind of exploiting them for different reasons. I feel like at its core, the subtext is very interesting,
Yeah, I think that's something that the Christians are really guilty of this, and we at Relevant try to be very mindful of this, how easy it is for, especially when you have somebody who was already kind of a celebrity in some other lane, then becomes a Christian. And I don't doubt, I'm not skeptical of people's claims when that happens, but the rush to platform them very quickly as a leader and a spokesperson within the church, because it's like, we got one, we got somebody who's got a voice and a platform, when in reality, they're still very new to this, and it can be very damaging and harmful, I think, to somebody's very young faith to be put in a position of leadership or authority before they know much about it. And I think that we as a church are often guilty of that. And like I said, that's something that we've obviously have a lot of opportunities to do it relevant and try to be very careful about. Because it's hard to be a Christian and it's hard to be a Christian leader, and it's not for everybody. And just because you come in with some sort of platform or notoriety doesn't mean that it's necessarily time or right for that to happen. Just let these people go to church.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously a show like Tiger King looks at sort of the extreme ends of the spectrum when it comes to, human behavior. But at its core, it is a character study. And what it's studying is our propensity to exploit the people we love, or when money and fame enter the picture, people's capacity to exploit the people they love and admire, and for the line between, like I said, the admiration and exploitation to get very, very blurry. And I do feel like that is something that needs to be explored and talked about in a lot of different ways in the church too.
Well, that's our Tiger King banner for your for the podcast. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, the hot list.
I'm tired of the city, scream if you're with me. If I'm gonna die, let's die somewhere pretty sad in the summer, city needs another yourself home.
You're listening to Take Yourself Home by Troye Sivan. At the beginning of the podcast, you heard a gospel for a new century from Yves Tumor. All right, time for our weekly look back at the top 5 stories at the intersection of faith and culture that came across our desk this week. It's time for...
It's the hot list, the hot list. It's just...
All right, number 5 this week. A Tampa Bay pastor has been arrested for holding services during the COVID-19 lockdown. All right, so police had warned Rodney Howard Brown, pastor of the River at Tampa Bay Church, about the dangers of holding Sunday services at his Florida megachurch, but Howard Brown defied the self-distancing guidelines and held 2 large services, even busing people in. He has since been arrested on misdemeanor charges of unlawful assembly and violating quarantine orders during a public health emergency. On Friday, the county had ordered all gatherings, including those of a religious nature, be limited to 10 or fewer participants in an attempt to stop the spread of the coronavirus. State law allows violations of the order to be punishable by up to 60 days in jail, a maximum fine of $500 or both. As Hillsborough Sheriff Chad Chronister said in a press briefing, quote, "Because of the reckless disregard of public safety and after repeated requests and warnings, I worked with our state attorney, Andrew Warren, to obtain a warrant for unlawful assembly and violation of public health emergency rules, both of which are second-degree misdemeanors. Our goal here is not to stop anyone from worshiping, but the safety and well-being of our community must always come first." Chronister even said members of his legal staff and command staff went to the church before the services in an attempt to explain the social distancing guidelines and the laws around the order, but Howard Brown had declined to meet with them. He was booked at the county jail and went free about 40 minutes later after posting bond. Right Wing Watch reports that Howard Brown had spread several conspiracy theories about COVID-19 from the pulpit, telling congregants that it was somehow both a, quote, phantom plague created by the Chinese and the product of a sinister plot from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
What?
Yeah,
I didn't know that last one.
Yeah, I've seen a
Wow.
twist at the end.
Yeah. Tiger King quote twist. Yeah, the end of the episode twist. You got to fire up the next one right away. Right away. Yeah. Wait, what? What? Bill and Melinda Gates? How are they
made up by Bill Gates? Wow.
There's a lot to unpack in this one, and I want to proceed with caution because I feel like this is a story that rides an interesting line of some practical realities and ideological principles that are interesting to navigate. Tyler, do you have a take on this? And then I can give my piece. But I want to hear what are your thoughts on this, man?
So I'm going to say, I mean, we've sort of talked about our own personal convictions here, right? The stay-at-home order is a good thing. Stopping the spread of the coronavirus is a good thing. And so my personal belief here, because I understand there's a broader issue here than just personal conviction. Yeah. Which is like the legal ramifications of something like this. Should the government be able to tell churches to stop gathering together and arresting, however briefly in this case, a pastor who refused to abide by that order? And I do think that this is something that you want the government in times of a national crisis, of a pandemic emergency. Desperate times do call for desperate measures. And I think it sounds to me, based on the reports that we're seeing, like the government and the state or the county, I guess, really did try. In this case, they made multiple attempts to talk with him, to try to work with him, to figure out a way that there could be some sort of compromise. And he declined to meet with them or discuss any possibility of that with them. So I would say in this case, I do feel like the right move was made here. That's my conviction on this. Jesse, what do you think?
I ultimately agree with you, and I think churches in particular have a responsibility to show in a practical way what loving your neighbor looks like in a moment like this, where we should take all actions possible to prevent people who are immune compromised or elderly or could suffer serious consequences of the coronavirus and COVID-19 to prevent them from getting it. I think it's the responsible and moral thing to do. Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't want what I'm going to say next to diminish that at all. I have some people very, Tyler's, very close to me who recently tested positive for COVID-19 and it's a serious situation. And I don't want other people to be putting that to that situation. But I do think there is a conversation to be had. And this isn't a defense of Rodney Howard Brown, who clearly is, not someone who I want to be aligned with endorsing, spreading weird conspiracy theories from the pulpit. But I do think there are conversations to be had about the suspension of basic civil liberties that are protected by the Constitution. And if you read the first few amendments of the Constitution, obviously along with like freedom of the press and freedom of speech, freedom of religion and the right to assemble, are right there. And there is a conversation to be had about what power the government has to suspend those, especially on a county level. This wasn't a state decision, it wasn't a federal decision. It was just county officials saying, we're going to arrest you if you assemble. I understand they're doing what they feel like is best to protect their community. And I agree with their decision, but I don't feel like it's unfair for people to raise concerns about how overnight civil liberties can be suspended. And even the quote from the sheriff, I don't agree with. Our goal, he says, the safety and well-being of our community must always come first. I don't agree with that. Like, I don't think safety and well-being always come first. I think there are cases to be made where the local sheriff his main concern shouldn't be my safety and well-being. His main concern should be protecting my rights and protecting the rights of my fellow citizens. Protecting safety and well-being coming first over our protected freedoms. I hate even saying slippery slope, but that's a slippery slope to authoritarianism. You see what happened in places like China, where it's like, well, we can do this because safety and well-being comes first. So, you know what I mean? Or in a lot of authoritarian countries, I don't think that is the role of all government officials to put safety and well-being first, because then you could, if that's your philosophy, you could take a lot of different approaches and say, well, it's unsafe to eat this kind of food. Well, you know what I mean? If safety and well-being come first, then what's stopping? I'm not trying to be paranoid, but I'm trying to take an ideological approach here. Who dictates what's safe and what's well-being? And this is an issue that I feel like times were very different, but even our founding fathers had some concerns about. This is going to sound hyperbolic, but again, I'm just talking on an ideological level, because I think in this case the officials made the right decision. But when Benjamin Franklin talked about he who trades temporary security deserves neither liberty nor security. Like, I'm not saying churches should go on and have their services. I think that's an irresponsible and even an immoral decision right now. But I do think, when the dust settles on all of this, there needs to be a discussion about when the suspension of civil liberties, especially ones concerning religion, can go into effect, and what the penalties will be for people who violate it. Tyler, what are your thoughts on that?
I had a hunch we might disagree on this one, Jesse, and that's I think
and again, I think at the core we agree. We agree that
we
they
agree on
have
what the right choice. We agree on what the pastor should have done.
And I actually agree with law enforcement in their action. I don't agree with their case for the act. I don't agree with his statement, but I agree that they had a duty to put a stop to this, right? But I do think it's not unfair to also have a conversation of where's the line with this type of action, I
think that the counties, that I think this is just a kind of a fundamental difference in like what the role of government should be. Like, is it about protecting individual liberty or the overall common good?
Yeah.
And those are two different things, and they get pitted against each other a lot. And that's why you want responsible leaders making these decisions. And what we've seen and can definitely see examples of around the globe in places like Hungary right now, where the coronavirus, where the pandemic is being used for massive government overreach and really creeping fascism.
Yeah,
that's definitely a real concern. And I'm glad that whatever differences of opinion people might have about what's happening in the U.S. right now, I don't think we're looking at what you would call a creeping dictatorship or anything like that.
No, not at all
right now. And I understand people's concerns about the slippery slope that some of these things could raise. But I also think that's why we have the things that have been enacted so far are things that are in place to protect the overall common good, overall common well-being of a community instead of individuals.
Yeah.
And so I do support this argument, but I understand, but I've seen other people with takes like yours, Jesse, and I understand it. I guess I just disagree about the role of the state in this case.
And again, I think they took the right decision. I think they walked a fine line and came out on the right side of it. I don't want people to misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm just saying, I do think after all of this is said and done, and this could be a new global reality, right? That these pandemics can happen. So. This is a new reality that we as humanity are going to have to deal with. And that's where I feel like larger conversations need to happen about, what types of civil liberties can be, suspended with enforceable actions. Again, I'm not saying they took the wrong action. I think they did. I think what Rodney Howard Brown did was selfish and reckless, period.
Yeah, for sure.
But you know what I'm saying? After this is said and done, if this is it's just like after, 9/11, our reality changed and we had to have a conversation about civil liberties. Like we had to have a conversation about intelligence gathering, right? I mean, that was, on paper, what Edward Snowden or someone like, a whistleblower like him exposed. I don't think the NSA had nefarious motivations for spying on the American people. I think they were trying to protect the American people from homegrown domestic terrorism, right? But it also opened up a conversation of what that looks like and where some of these policies could lead if they left unchecked. That's all. That's kind of the point I'm trying to make, I guess.
Well, that is fair. I would love to hear some readers' thoughts on this, actually, some listeners, because I know it's a complicated conversation.
Yeah.
And there are probably some people out there who are better equipped than me, at least, to weigh in on this.
Yeah. And my view of libertarianism isn't that far, I'm not like some expert, and I wouldn't even consider myself a libertarian. I'm about a Joe Exotic's level on this. And as we can see, I'm just armchairing it, But I'm just saying from a philosophical and ideological standpoint, I do think after all is said and done, a conversation of what managing crisis is look like is a fair one to have,
Yeah. I tried to go up and down on these good news, bad news on the hot list this week in my ranking of them. We'll see how I did. Number 4 this week, church attendance is up, but giving is down during pandemic season. So the COVID-19 pandemic has churches around the world scrambling to rethink the practical realities of church and more existential questions of what church even is when you take away the Sunday service. Barna has been keeping an eye on American churches since the coronavirus lockdown began. And now the research firm has released its preliminary findings over at Religion News Service. In short, attendance has gone up, virtually speaking, but financial giving is taking a hit. So I thought this was interesting. By the second week of the national emergency, 60% of pastors surveyed reported the crisis was taking some toll on their congregations, as opposed to just a little. Unsurprisingly, a mere 7% of pastors said their churches weren't offering any online services. And the virtual services are paying off. 54% of pastors reported a higher online attendance than their usual in-person attendance, and a quarter said they were seeing much higher attendance. 64% of pastors said they see their role as, quote, communicating a message of faith and hope to people in the middle of the crisis. And 42%, not a majority, but a pretty healthy number, said they've seen their congregation's faith grow in response to the emergency. Now, that hasn't really translated to a financial windfall. 80% of pastors report that giving is down. 47% say it is down significantly. Nevertheless, 95% of pastors surveyed said they believe their churches will survive all of this. So that's optimistic and that's good. I was really surprised personally that they're seeing more people show up for church online than they were seeing. It shouldn't be that surprising, I guess, because you remove one of the big obstacles.
Yeah.
You can just roll out of bed and go to church.
Yeah.
You don't even have to put on pants to go to church.
And hopefully all of this is like a net positive for local churches. Ultimately more people will be, hearing the gospel and being plugged in. I think, obviously, I think there's benefits to going to church in person when you can, but at the same time, I don't think there's anything wrong with attending online. But
yeah.
But I do think a lot of people don't like. I know a lot of people who have been ordering from like local restaurants are rightly so, like tipping well and wanting to support, local businesses in their communities that, are suffering because of this crisis. But I do think sometimes it's easy to forget, man, churches employ a lot of people too. And if we stop tithing, you risk the livelihood of people who are work for churches. That just because we don't attend, I do think people should still obviously tithe and support their churches. Absolutely. Because it's not just keeping the lights on in a building. This is people's livelihoods and their kind of financial security is at risk too. A lot of families' financial security is at risk too. So I do think giving right now is really important. And plus, guys, I heard a really great sermon online this weekend. It was about Bill and Melinda Gates, Area 51, Monsanto, and you're not going to believe this, Carol Baskins. Okay, it's unbelievable stuff, mind-blowing stuff that I heard from the pulpit about all of what's going on. So.
Well, we appreciate the pastors out there of all stripes and all belief systems and all beliefs about the true origins of this pandemic and keep us updated. Number 3 this week. So this is an interesting one that I hope people are talking about. Rikers Island is poised to be one of the major coronavirus tragedies in the U.S. So last Thursday, New York-based criminal justice advocacy group Brooklyn Defender Services called on local lawmakers to release the inmates of Rikers Island following reports of a COVID-19 outbreak in the prison, where inmates are kept in close quarters and dangerous conditions. So far, 75 inmates and 45 jail staff members have tested positive for the disease, with many more awaiting test results and infected persons being detained next to healthy and elderly people. Rikers is shaping up to be a potential tragedy in the making. In a written statement, Brooklyn Defender Services sounded the warning that COVID-19 poses not just to inmates, but to staff and the city at large if actions are not taken to protect inmates. They wrote, quote, "For weeks, we have joined defenders, advocates, incarcerated people, medical professionals, and elected officials to warn of the grave risks that an outbreak of COVID-19 in jails and prisons poses to incarcerated people, staff, and all New Yorkers. As the virus spreads like wildfire through Rikers, we worry that every hour that passes brings us closer to disaster and death, whether inside the facilities or shortly after release. Given the high infection rate in jails to date, we fear that no one in the jails, whether incarcerated people or staff, is safe." The organization published accounts it's received of incarcerated people being denied medical service due to a shortage of resources, overflowing sewage, which can spread the novel coronavirus, and a lack of soap and other sanitation supplies due to citywide shortages. There are a little over 5,000 people serving sentences on Rikers. Of those, 551 are serving less than a year for low-level offenses, 666 are serving time for a technical parole violation, and 811 are serving time for a crime that probably would have been processed as a misdemeanor, except for their status as a parolee. That's why Dr. Robert Cohen, who sits on the New York City Board of Correction, told Slate, quote, "In New York City, there are a lot of people locked up in small, dirty places who don't have to be. So the notion that they should stay, and the people who are responsible for caring for them medically from a security perspective are going to be exposed to unnecessary, life-threatening risks doesn't make sense." Brooklyn Defender Services and other lawmakers and advocates have called for releasing inmates, and experts agree that many of the inmates could be easily released and should be for the safety and well-being of all involved. I think the reason this story is interesting to me is because it's so easy to stop worrying about other ongoing issues when you've got this urgent crisis, right? It kind of snaps your perspective into place, and all of a sudden you're focused, rightfully so, on your own health and your own safety. And I know that everybody that's listening is doing their part, but things like issues in the criminal justice system are ongoing and in fact are heightened by this same issue. They're urgent. What's happening there in Rikers is urgent as well. And it's important that we remember, and I talked to actually our guest Lecrae about this a little bit coming up, because he has a real heart and passion for people who are for inmates, for the incarcerated. And I really hope that we're all continuing, that we remember the same passions, the same issues that you cared about back in February 3 years ago those are still real issues, and in many cases those issues are facing their own new and nuanced challenges. And insofar as you can, I hope that we're all still giving to and praying for those same things.
Yeah, criminal justice reform, I think, remains one of the major issues that Christians should be concerned about, especially in this country. And when you look at drug laws and sentencing laws and how they disproportionately affect certain communities and certain demographics, and you just look at the numbers, it's cause for real concern. And an issue like this, where a concerning issue becomes an immediate crisis because the health of all of these inmates is at risk. And you look at, like you said, Tyler, the reason why some of these people are behind bars in the first place is questionable. You know, a lot of these are low-level, nonviolent drug offenders who would probably do better in rehab than some, rundown jail that's just gonna, any kind of social, mental, or dependency issues they had going in are probably just going to be made worse by putting in this horrible situation. I think it creates a lot of urgency for us to reconsider what we do to people who have, been found guilty of violating some law. Do we really care? Is it really, a correctional facility, or is it a punishment facility? Like, what are we doing here in America? Are we trying to punish people, or are we actually trying to correct behavior and rehabilitate
people?
Are we trying to rehabilitate people, or are we just trying to lock them away and give them, these insane punishments that threaten their health? Going back to the Rodney Howard-Browne thing, if Christians are concerned about churches, being able to meet, and we should be concerned about the health and well-being of citizens of this country who have been placed behind bars for, questionable reasons in a lot of cases. And just because you commit a crime, that's not a death sentence. You shouldn't be forced, we should, if you're in prison or incarcerated, your health and well-being should be the primary responsibility of the people that have incarcerated you. Yeah, it's a concerning situation for sure.
We're taking an upswing here. I like this story. Number 2, Guy Fieri is launching a fund to give $500 to every restaurant worker affected by the pandemic. So as I'm sure everybody knows, partisan wrangling has slowed down the federal stimulus check Americans will be receiving to offset some of the economic tolls of self-quarantine. But Flavortown is a benevolent dictatorship, which means its overlord can get his financial relief out in streamlined fashion.
Even if that streamlined fashion involves racing stripes and frosted tips. That's the definition of streamlined fashion.
Listen to this. Guy is doing his level best to keep the service industry afloat by getting $500 to any restaurant worker affected by the pandemic. He's teaming up with the National Restaurant Association Educational Foundation to create what's called the Restaurant Employee Relief Fund. The fund is raising money to give a one-time $500 grant to all impacted workers. According to People magazine, applicants need to have worked in the restaurant industry for at least 90 days, have the restaurant businesses be their primary source of income, and have seen their wages decrease or lost their job on or after March 10th. You can start sending your applications in yesterday, April 2nd. So if you're listening and this is you, get on top of this. Yeah. Fieri said in a release, "My entire career has been in the restaurant business, from bussing tables to flambe captain." Can you imagine? The flambe captain to dishwasher to chef. I have done it all. I've also spent the better part of the last 15 years. You'd have to imagine his voice here, traveling this great country and meeting other folks who've dedicated their lives to this business. And let me tell you something. They are the hardest working, most real deal workers you've ever met, the heartbeats of their communities, but they need our help. And with Restaurant Relief America, we can serve up some support when these restaurant employees need it most right now. So let me tell you why I like this, because I feel like Guy kind of, he was an early celebrity chef.
Yeah.
And then he took a hit early on because like the Bourdains, like the way cooler celebrity chefs started coming up, and they were the new rock stars. They were tatted out and they could travel, and
they didn't look like a 90s Hot Topic exploded
they
on
look
them.
like Sonic the Hedgehog. And Guy kept doing his thing, and I don't think I want to eat Guy's cooking too much based on what I've seen.
It's
I
a
don't
lot
really
of
know what
donkey sauce. It's
is.
heavy. It's heavy donkey sauce.
I'm not interested. But he has always seen, whenever there is any sort of national emergency, we report on this. Guy is there, and he is making food for people, and he's giving it away for free. And it may not be the food they necessarily want to eat at that time, but they get it on the house from Guy Fieri.
Yeah.
And now he's trying to do no small thing. There's a lot of restaurant workers who have taken a real financial hit, and $500 isn't a ton of money if you don't have any other income.
Still,
but
it's not nothing.
But it's not nothing, and when it's for everybody, that's a huge undertaking that he's launched. And so I've given the official Relevant Podcast stamp of approval to Guy Fieri on this one.
Guy Fieri is what happens when a Joe Exotic goes right. You know what I mean?
He's sort of the chaotic.
We've seen what happens when Joe Exotic goes wrong. We've seen a lot of cases of that, but when it goes right, you get a Guy Fieri. Now, Tyler, there's one side note in this. I feel like you should note that the $500 will not be paid in cash or what we think of as standard currency, but it will be in vats of donkey sauce. And right now, the trading, it's like the barrel of oil. Donkey sauce rates are at an all-time low. So you're going to get about 10 to 12 vats. But $500.
But if you're a citizen of Flavortown, that can go a long way.
Oh, that's a mortgage payment right there. Mortgage $500 at donkeys. No, I'm just joking. I'm just kidding. I feel like Guy Fieri's a pretty good sport about this. He seems like a legit great dude. So good on him, man. Seriously, real talk. Dude. Yeah.
Mediocre chef, good guy.
Yeah. Good on him, man.
All right. So number one this week. All right. This drive-in church worship guide is real. All right. I hope you all saw this. Not every church is going virtual service for pandemic season. Some churches are opting for a drive-in service situation, repurposing old drive-in movie theaters to host church while maintaining social distancing guidelines. It's a pretty good option. And as West Liberty, Ohio's First Church of God proved, you can even find ways to interact here. This was reported on by local news. This church handed out in their program ways that you could continue to interact with the service and each other with your car. So they, I'll give you an example. I'll just read some of these to you here. Parking lights on means I am ready to worship. Headlights on means I am singing along. Right turn signal is raising one hand in worship. Wipers on is raising both hands in worship. Honk is like a preach it. Honk is just like a preach it. Amen.
Yeah. Okay.
Right on.
Yeah.
But you got to be careful because right turn signal is raising one hand. Left turn is I want to ask for forgiveness of my sins.
That seems
so it's
very
important to get
specific.
that one right.
Very specific. Yeah. Yeah.
Hazard lights is I am in need of prayer, and spraying washer fluid means I would like to be baptized. As far as I can tell, this is sincere. This was offered up sincerely, and I laughed at it pretty hard. But I can also kind of see is this?
Why not?
I want to hear the case. I want to hear the sincere case for it because I think one might exist.
I mean, look, man, I feel like you driving church presents obvious communication barriers for people in their cars. I mean, but it's last time I checked, you can be like, I think the only thing that is I think this was made in an honest, I want to give
it's an earnest attempt.
Yeah, I want to give, them the benefit of the doubt here. But I do feel like the thing that I feel like kind of, when you raise your hand in worship at a church, right? At least from my understanding, I'm not doing it so that other people can see me raising my hands, right? I'm doing it because it's an expression to God, not to the people in the rows behind me, right? You know what I mean? It's an expression of worship and surrender to God. And I can still raise my hands if I'm sitting in my car seat. You know what I mean? Like, if my neighbor might have to look through my window to see me, but I'm not doing it for my neighbor. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm doing it to as an expression to God. So, but I do think I think it's interesting how the church is adapting. But I want to see like Joel Houston or like a worship leader, like leading worship and being like, all right, I want to hear everyone now. Oh, every hazard light on. Oh, Jesus Christ.
How would you like to be the one person who got like the novelty honk that you have to use now? Like during a really beautiful part in this, a really meaningful, like powerful moment, and then you just have the one person in the background.
Like when the pastor really brings it, everyone just fires up the car alarm, you know? Yeah, it's really powerful, man. Every car
there is some car privilege here, because what about the motorcycle folks? Did they just not get are they just not allowed to worship?
Yeah.
Thought about that?
Yeah. Well, bam, boom.
They still count.
Boom, mic drop.
Count.
Yeah.
All right, well, that'll do it for this week's.
It's the hot list. It's sizzling.
Stay tuned when we come back. Lecrae joins us.
Pray this, hold on. Let me go. I've been going through so much, I swear these people let my throat. That's on me, that's on mamas. On my mama, I can't take no more, so miss me with that drama. Get your commas, get your rec straight. Get your facts straight. Hold me down, I rise up on her like the tax rate. Keep my past straight, never lack faith. God been working, they gon' have to hold me back, man. And tell them, you can pick a side if you wanna. You already know who I roll with. You don't want no problems with me. Get these shackles off my.
You're listening to Set Me Free by Lecrae. So Lecrae is a multi-Grammy award-winning, platinum-selling artist, New York Times best-selling author, entrepreneur, speaker, thought leader, and philanthropist, and co-owner and president of Reach Records, multi-hyphenate guy. His 2014 album Anomaly debuted at #1 on Billboard 200, and with nearly 100,000 copies sold through the first week, the first album to top both Billboard 200 and the gospel charts simultaneously. To date, he has sold more than 3 million copies, been nominated for 5 Grammys, including a win for Best Gospel Album, 15 Dove Awards, 1 Billboard Music Award, and received both a Soul Train Music Award and a BET Hip Hop nomination. Lecrae will release his 9th studio album, Restoration, on May 15th. Here in 2020, the album will feature artists across all genres, including John Legend and Kirk Franklin. I loved getting to talk to Lecrae about his time. He spent some time in Israel, which was a big part of the inspiration for this new album, Restoration. And that was one of the first things I wanted to talk about is what was it about that time over in Israel that he spent that was so impactful and powerful for him and the other guys who went along on that trip. Here's what he had to say.
I think it's just seeing things that you've read about come to life. You know, the best way I can articulate it is, you know, something is real, and you've spent time studying it and looking at it in a book, and then you see it, and it's almost like, oh, wow. You know, as if you were, it's almost as if you saw something come to life that you thought you believed it was real, but now you know it's real. You're right. You see where King David lived. You know, you see where King David lives. You see these places. Strengthens your faith. It just, I don't know, it adds a special moment to what you believe and what you have built your life around.
So then I wanted to know about Restoration itself. Why this title, Restoration? What was it about that word and really about the process that was so compelling and was so convinced him that this was really going to be not only the title, but the theme of his new album?
I was experiencing it. You know, I was at home, I was journaling, and I wanted God to restore me. I was so broken, man, just beat up, scarred, plenty of childhood traumas that I hadn't dealt with, identity issues, depression, anxiety, just all those particulars, where it's kind of like you're in such bad shape that, you're suicidal and you don't want to continue on, but at the same time, you don't want to leave your family in despair. So you're just saying, I'm so low, I'm at the bottom of the bottom that, I have to believe you can fix me. And when you come to the realization that no matter how low you are, God can restore you, it becomes your hope. It becomes your beacon light. You just get excited about it because you know he can do it. And that's what he's historically done with the Jonah, with the Job, with the David. I mean, the list goes on. And so it just gives you hope.
One thing I've always appreciated about Lecrae, he's pretty open about his mental health. He talks about not only the struggles that he's had, but the ways that he's found some level of being able to manage and deal with some of the mental health issues he's dealt with. And I wanted to know, especially right now, when a lot of us are trapped inside, unable to really escape a lot of our own mental health issues, some of us for the first time in a while. I just wanted to know what's helping him. What have been some of his best, really practical tips for dealing with things like depression and for others of us, things like anxiety, what helps? And I actually, these are very practical, and I hope that you start implementing them into your own daily quarantine routine. I'm going to.
God has provided means for healing and restoration. And so it can be supernatural. It can be a prayer and wow, look at this, everything's different. But oftentimes, he's present in science. He's present in us, taking the time to read books by doctors, who can walk us down some healthy paths. And so what I would say for people is I'm a big advocate of meditation, which is not like some kind of, weird mystical thing, but it's literally clearing your mind of the clutter that is overwhelming you, whether those are anxious thoughts or sad thoughts. It's just taking the time to clear your mind. And it could be spiritual. It could be a time where you're reflecting on how close God is to you, but mostly it's clearing your mind of the clutter. And then I'm also a fan of mediation, which is therapy. It's sitting with someone, even in this time where you can do telemedicine. And I was just on a call, I do once a month check-ins with my therapist and just seeing how everything is going and how you're processing, because they can give you insight and wisdom. And then finally, medication. If you were diabetic, you wouldn't say, I can't take insulin. God doesn't want me to do that. That God has provided a means for you to be healthy through insulin. And same way with medication. You may need medication, and that's a way he's providing wholeness and healing for your mind. But just simply, practically, I would say, make sure you're working out. It releases the endorphins, even if it's just some push-ups. We'll do something. It's helpful for your mind. Also, try to eat as healthy as you possibly can. Avoid a lot of extra carbs and sugar. It's good for your mind. And then lastly, focus on things that bring about encouragement and freedom and life and our life giving, instead of focusing on the negatives consistently.
May 15th is when Restoration comes out, and I wanted to know, for people who've been fans of Lecrae, listening to him for a long time now, what sets this album apart? What makes it different? Why should we be more hyped about this, or hyped about this one in a new and different way? Here's what he said.
If I'm completely honest, this is probably the most vulnerable I've ever been. This is the freest I've ever been. This is, I think I started off in my career very idealistic, and then when your ideals crumble, you become cynical, and then you heard some cynical music from me. And now when idealism meets cynicism, you get realism, and I'm just real. I see things in a real perspective, and God is real, and pain is real, and I'm just not afraid. There's nothing that can happen to me from being honest about things now. So, you want to know what happened when I met Beyonce? I don't mind. I'll tell you. You know, let's put it on the album. Do you want to know what happens? You want to know what it feels like when you win a Grammy? You go back home to your dream house and your marriage is falling apart. I'm going to tell you about it. You know, let me tell you about it via music. And so that's just where my plane has landed, and I'm healthier than I've ever been, and that's what you're going to hear in the music.
Looking forward to that album, looking forward to the documentary that will be released along with it. And of course, there's a book coming out as well. That was Lecrae. Restoration will be out May 15th. When we come back, our Quarantine Rex Genre Edition. You're listening to Stardew. It's the new one from Purity Ring. All right, we're back with another round of Quarantine Rex. This is some of the stuff that we're watching and enjoying while we're on lockdown.
Non-Tiger King.
We're doing it. We've got non-Tiger King edition. I think you've heard our thoughts on that one. We're doing another round of genre picks where Jesse and I each pick a genre and tell you to run amok in there. Something that you can enjoy watching. Jesse, what genre did you go with this week?
Okay, I went with sort of an obscure genre, but all the three films that I'm going to recommend are found on Netflix. And the genre I picked are poker movies. Now, no matter what your moral feelings are about face cards and gambling, I know different people have different feelings about those. It does provide a very interesting, extreme, plot device to understand the human condition. And so real quick, the movies I want to recommend, one is sort of the OG poker movie Rounders. Most people have seen. It's worth a rewatch, especially given the rise of Koppelman and Levine, the duo who wrote this film and now are arguably two of the most important screenwriters in prestige television. Would you agree with that statement, Tyler, about Koppelman and Levine?
Oh, I think they're huge. Huge.
You know, they this was one of their big breakouts. It stars Matt Damon. It's John Malkovich. It's a really fun, great movie about friendship and loyalty and moral compromise. The movie's Rounders. It's great. The second one I want to recommend is a movie that kind of flew under the radar, had a weird release, so not a lot of people saw it, despite it having like a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. And the two stars are Ryan Reynolds and Ben Mendelsohn, two very different actors. I think Ryan Reynolds is more known for his sort of Ryan Reynolds persona, where Ben Mendelsohn really dives into characters. But that juxtaposition works in this movie about a down and out gambling addict who befriends a kind of a drifter that seems to have it all together, but is really kind of suffering through his own moral darkness as they both try to pull each other into redemption. Fascinating film. It's a breezy film, one that its pacing and its plot are really unlike a lot of movies you've seen. It's called Mississippi Grind, and it's about two guys who go on the road on riverboats to try to win back money and try to win back some redemption for themselves. The final movie is a movie starring Jake Johnson. Tyler, I know you're a big Jake Johnson fan.
I do like Jake. Yeah, I like him a lot.
In addition to starring, I feel like...
And I like this movie.
Yeah, and in addition to, I think, most famously starring in the show New Girl, he's also starred in a handful of sort of the mumblecore-ish indie films, like Drinking Buddies comes to mind, about people who work in a romance that blooms in a brewery. But in Win It All, Jake Johnson kind of plays a down and out, again, sort of a degenerate gambler whose own moral compromise puts him in an impossible situation, and he too must fight for redemption and find out what's truly important in life. The movie's called Win It All. It's on net. It was a Netflix original. Tyler, you saw Win It All. You agree? Did you like it? It's a poker movie, but it's a good one.
It's a great poker movie. It's a really fun. It's a weirdly like high stakes but kind of low, I would say low urgency movie, as his movies often are. Like it's just not wanting for lack of of an escalating plot or anything like that, but it does it very quietly, which makes it more effective in a lot of ways.
For sure.
I liked it a lot.
Yeah. Tyler, what are your recommends, man?
So I decided to go with superhero movies, but some of the underrated some of the superhero movies that these aren't in the MCU.
Yeah.
These came out. Most of them came out pre like kind of the takeover and all. But there are some gems. They weren't all bad back before Batman Begins and Iron Man. One of which, and this would actually be a fun one if you haven't seen it with your whole family, that you really could. It's called Sky High. And it's an older Disney movie. I think it's from 2005, and it's about a school, like a high school for teen superheroes. The superhero parents and their family, kind of like if The Incredibles sent their kids off to school to learn how to be superheroes. Oh, cool. And it got kind of overlooked because it doesn't look. The trailer was bad. The costumes don't look good in the promotional art, but the script is really, really tight and solid, and it is a fun one. It's totally kid friendly. It's kind of made for kids, but I think adults would find it to be a lot more rewarding than they would expect. If all you were looking at was the back of the box of the Blu-ray,
yeah.
I'd recommend that one to you. Another one that I wanted to recommend from 2012 was Chronicle. This was directed by Josh Trank. It was an early Michael B. Jordan movie, kind of early on in his career. Also got Dane DeHaan and Alex Russell in there. And it's sort of a found footage type film about 3 teen boys who accidentally get superpowers. And the found footage thing actually works pretty well for it. And what I like about this one is how well it understands like young male friendship and the tension and the camaraderie and the competition that can really easily pop up when you're a high school boy. How you and your friend, how easily friendships can go awry and turn to violence, and the effect that has on your friendships. I thought it was a pretty savvy move, especially for the people involved. Josh Trank kind of famously has flamed out as a director since then, but this was an early, really promising movie, and I hope he can get back to that level of filmmaking. I was going to say,
you want to talk about
it was excellent.
A complicated filmmaking duo, Josh Trank and Max Landis. Very complicated legacies. Very young filmmakers, but also very complicated.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of behind the scenes Hollywood drama that you can read up on your own if you want to, but here for Chronicle, what they did worked pretty well. And then the last one I want to do, probably familiar, a lot of people have heard of it, but I feel like it's gotten really overlooked, is the original Christopher Reeve Superman, the 1978 Superman movie, the first one, which was extremely popular at the time, very well reviewed, but is obviously forgotten now. And I would encourage you, if you haven't seen it in a while, go back to it again. If your kids haven't seen it, fire it up for them. It still slaps.
Yeah,
still bangs.
Still holds up.
It's really tightly plotted, really well done. I'd encourage people to check that out, and it's easy to find now too. That's not. And Christopher Reeves was one of the best casting decisions of any of these. Before Robert Downey Jr., before Chris Evans, before Robert Pattinson, Christopher Reeves really nailed the part in a rare and unique way. It's a smart movie, smartly made movie. And I think with that, we will wrap it up. Hey, many thanks to Lecrae for joining us. Restoration, the book and the movie and the documentary will be out on May 15th. And also, hey, as long as you're on our Apple podcast page, take a listen to some of our other podcasts. We've got Relevant Daily there, for example, to where I bring you the top 3 stories at the intersection of faith and culture, Monday through Friday, about 10 minutes at a time. And hey, with that, we'll wrap it up. I'm Tyler Huckabee.
Jalen String.
I'm Jesse Carey.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great and safe weekend.
This ain't by design, girl. Take it softer, you know. I'm out my mind, girl. Don't make this harder. Come and light my fire, baby. How much longer till December? Say what you really mean.
Thank you for listening to the Relevant Podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to leave us a review on iTunes. Check out other shows from the Relevant Podcast Network in the podcast section at relevantmagazine.com. And while you're there, browse exclusive podcast merchandise at our online store. Make sure to subscribe to Relevant Magazine. Info is available at relevantmagazine.com/subscribe.
I looked you in your eyes, it was over. 'Cause when I really needed you the most, yeah, you were gone then that summer. But I can't be there, and this ain't
Every hazard light on! Every hazard light on!
Relevant Podcast Network.
Time is precious, and so are our pets. So time with our pets is extra precious. That's why we started Dutch. Dutch provides 24/7 access to licensed vets with unlimited virtual visits and follow-ups for up to 5 pets. You can message a vet at any time and schedule a video visit the same day. Our vets can even prescribe medication for many ailments, and shipping is always free. With Dutch, you'll get more time with your pets and year-round peace of mind when it comes to their vet care. Go to Dutch.com to get vet care that is always there for just $92 a year.